Welcome to part 2 of the Final Fantasy XIII-2 any percent speedrun video tutorial. We're going to pick up right where we left off in the last video. As soon as the Archylte Steppe gate is open and available, we go right in there. We don't have to do any menuing until we accept the first quest in this area. And this is another gate where you can do a cutscene skip before the cutscene actually starts loading, or before it becomes visually apparent that it started loading. So kind of starting around this area, you can start tapping start, and you can perform the skip before that happens. And then you can just start holding forward to, and Noel will move towards the gate.
We should talk to those people. Maybe they can tell us what's going on.
Good idea. And let's hurry, before those chocobos decide they need to stretch their legs. What do you want?
After you grab the chest here on the right, you're going to turn around and do a Mog throw. You can walk over and pick up the other chest, but I believe it saves a couple of seconds. Once you're able to kind of get this timing down of moving it over here and throwing it just a little bit in front of the chest. And that way Mog will do a bounce and he'll land right over top of it. If you throw a little bit in the wrong direction, Mog will just bounce around down there. So you want to wait until that text appears before you start talking to the hunter. We're going to do a skip, mash, skip, talk to him again, skip, mash, skip. When Mog collects an item, or where there's any kind of text that appears on screen, there are other kinds of text that can interrupt the text that appears. So for instance, if you throw Mog for that item, and you hear the chest opening, but you don't see the text appear, and you start talking to the hunter before you get the item, it'll actually interrupt all of that. So once you talk to the hunter, and then you come out of that, Mog will be back with you, but you actually won't have gotten the item yet. So anytime you do a Mog throw to get an item, if you change a leader, if you interact with somebody or make other text appear on screen, it's going to interrupt what Mog was doing. So you always want to make sure that if you have a Mog throw active, don't do anything that would trigger something else happening that would overwrite that. Otherwise, you might have to backtrack to throw them again or something like that. So just be careful of that. After you throw them down there, when you run up the steps, don't just start interacting with the hunter right away. You're going to have to wait a second or so. So after we've accepted the quest, we're going to head into the Crystarium, and we just need Noel to learn Blizzaga. So you should be about 1 or 2 away at this point, depending on how you've leveled. And if we had Nekton, depending on where you are, we have Thunder now, so we don't have to worry about anything at this point. If you don't have Thunder at this point yet, you still have an opportunity to collect slivers from this upcoming fight. You should only be fighting 1 fight in this area before you get to the boss. So if you don't get any from this quest, then we'll talk about what to do with the Scandroid before we actually fight Feral. And the other thing we need to do is equip a Grimoire hat, the one that we just picked up downstairs. We're going to put that over top of his Magician's Mark. And we are good to go.
Right. Let's go exterminate some pests.
We should search somewhere in this area, I guess.
You should get a spawn around here before you make it to the Cactuar statue. If you don't, try to hang around here to get an encounter. Otherwise, the Nektons or the Cleones are going to chase you. If at all possible, try to coordinate the spawn so it's close to the Cactuar statue, but it's not always going to work that way. So we're going to use a similar strategy that we were using before. We're going to switch into Malevolence, we're going to get Faith on Noel, and then we're going to be calm buffering for the rest of the battle. So now we have Blizzaga, and we have 5 ATB gauges on Noel. So we're going to be using Blizzara, which costs 2, and Blizzaga, which costs 3. So it's going to be Blizzara in Ravager, and then as soon as he releases Blizzaga, you're going to switch into Commando for a calm buffer. We also want to try to take down the Chocobo as soon as possible. We have the Grimoire hat equipped before this fight because the Chocobo can actually deal some pretty serious damage, and he can stagger you if you're not paying attention. Or if you're caught in between trying to take down a few other things and the goblins are surrounding you. So we want to take him down as soon as possible and have that Grimoire hat equipped just in case we need to throw some potions in the meantime. So let's switch into Malevolence right away. We'll get our spells ready, and there we go. We're also going to throw just a couple of ruins at the Chocobo, just to keep that chain gauge up. Throw a potion at this point. Sorry, my buttons are sticking out my controller a little bit there. Average fight, you're going to have to throw a couple of potions here. And then everyone should be clustered pretty closely together for the rest of this fight. And because you're throwing exclusively area of attack effects, sorry, area of effect attacks, everything should be fine there. Everyone's all clustered together and you can take care of that. That was 58 seconds. That's actually a pretty good time. You want to stick around under a minute. You know your things are going well. If you're up to about a minute 15, that's not the end of the world. It does happen. If you're getting like minute 30, minute 45, just try to reevaluate the fight a little bit. Make sure that you know, you're either using a saboteur or a commando to keep the Chocobo's chain gauge up, and just kind of watch, you know, see if you're just being attacked relentlessly by some of the goblins. Could just be bad luck in some of the fights, but just take a look at that if you're getting anything really over a minute 30.
In a flash, huh?
There's a little bit of RNG in this quest. You can manipulate it a little bit. So often if you just turn around right away, you can go and grab the wool from this guy pretty quickly, and he's going to be there. And turn around. And if you were close to, one of the reasons you want to get that goblin spawn close to the Cactuar statue is because you want to manipulate where the enemy spawns are going to happen here. So if you were fairly far away from the Cactuar statue, when you get down here, you might have to be a little bit careful about where you do your Mog throw and how you turn around to grab the chest, because you might get an enemy encounter in this area. But where I am, I should be relatively safe here. And so I should, as soon as I see that dialogue box above the sheep, I can throw Mog, and that's going to attract the sheep to come over towards me. Then as soon as you interact with him, make sure you do a cutscene skip, because if the sheep has run past Noel a fair bit, it's going to take some time for him to turn around, extend his arm, and then show the dialogue box. So the cutscene skip can save quite a bit of time there. And then same thing, as soon as you see that dialogue box above the sheep, throw Mog, and it's going to get him to turn around and come running. And again, he was a little far away there. I've seen him much closer before. The only danger is the farther away he is, the better chance there is of getting an encounter before we make it back to the Cactuar statue. Depending on what you get though, that's not too bad. Sometimes you will get enemies that chase you, and that just makes it a little bit more difficult. But all in all, not too bad for that sheep section. After you talk to her, you're going to do a cutscene skip. Don't mash X through this text. It's deceiving. Normally, when that text appears on the screen, you would want to mash through it. But if you do, it actually doesn't get rid of the text. It just starts talking to her again, and you're going to waste some time there. So the next fight that's coming up is Feral, and you're going to want to make sure that you have Thunder on your Necton at this point. If you haven't gotten it through the slivers, then you will need to infuse the Scandroid. So make sure that you haven't sold any bolts at that point. You should have enough to be able to level up your Scandroid, I think you need to like get him to level 8 to be able to infuse him. So we'll just take a quick look at that before we go to the fight. So here you go into your Crystarium. So we do have Thunder on Nekton, so we don't need to worry about that. If we didn't, we'd go over to our Scandroid, and here we have 10 Potent Bolts. And this is pretty standard at this point that you would. You need 8 to get Thunder. So you would just level him up to level 8, and then you go into your monsters and use an infusion on the Scandroid. He'd have Thunder available, and then you get to select that, and you'd have Thunder on your Nekton. The reason is that Thunder is cast much more quickly than Blizzard, and if you only have Blizzard available on Nekton, you're not going to get Feral's chain gauge up high enough in the initial part of the fight. So there are 2 strategies for this. I don't know if Blizzard only will work in the other strategy that some people use. In the one that I use, it doesn't work. It's been incredibly inconsistent. I've had a little bit of success here and there, but it's very inconsistent, and it's not recommended that you run into it without Thunder. So just something to keep in mind. So you do have 2 options there. You do have the Scandroid or the Sliver options to get in there.
Did you learn to fight like that while you traveled?
So we also do have the option of doing a little bit of Crystarium work here. You can save it until after, because you are going to get more CP after this. But just to be safe, we can go in here and we can do some Ravager work. We don't even have to go all the way to the next Crystarium level. And in fact, you're not generally, unless you've gotten to some extra fights, you're not going to be able to do that. You also want to try to have an enemy encounter appear close to where Feral is. So just a quick review of this fight at this point. So this is slightly different from some of the other fights that we've done. Generally, we've been using a commando to get some kind of chain maintenance on a boss or on a particular enemy. Now that we have the Saboteur role available, which we have had for a few fights, we're going to use that as our chain maintenance, basically. So Saboteurs and Sentinels do actually have a small amount of maintenance that's higher than Ravagers, but lower than Commandos. So we're going to, since we're starting off in Smart Bomb, Sarah's going to be casting D-Shell and D-Protect on Feral. They are ineffective against him. He cannot be affected by D-Shell or D-Protect, but the Stagger maintenance is going to work. So we're going to start off that way. We're using Blizzards and Thunders, and then we're going to switch over into Try Disaster just to get an ATB refresh and build up his chain very close to staggering. What's going to happen after that is he's going to do a flying attack, and just before he does that, we're going to switch into our double Sentinel roll, and that'll give us enough defense boost to hold off on the damage. As soon as we finish switching into that and he's hit us, we're going to switch over into Malevolence so that we can start that the Faith boost on Noel, and then we're going to switch back into Patient Probing because Feral's going to land again. We're going to take some damage. So let's go up to that point, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what to do when we get there. So Thunder and Blizzard. So at this point, Feral's quite close to being staggered, but we're going to need a little bit more to push him over the edge, and also, if we just use Ravagers to get him into stagger, his chain gauge is going to deplete too quickly to be able to defeat him. So if we had a Commando or a Sentinel or a Saboteur roll, we'd be able to maintain that stagger gauge enough to be able to defeat him before his chain depletes. So we happen to be in Sentinel rolls right now. So we're going to let either Sarah or Noel, whoever gets to it first, we're going to let him or her provoke Feral, and then that will bring his chain gauge back up, and then we're going to start moving over into comm buffering. So whoever gets to the auto cover first is the one that we'll go with, and then we switch over. Also worth using a potion at this point. We're going to have to use a couple to get through this fight. So it's pretty straightforward. The only kind of tricky spot is just making sure that you've used the Sentinel or Commando to get that maintenance of his chain gauge. So once that's taken care of, just make sure you heal. You might have to use 3 potions, just depending on what kind of attacks he's doing and if you've missed any of the guards with the Sentinels. 2 should be enough. If you're being a little bit cautious, you can throw out 3. Try to time your potions in between your ATB refreshes. So after you've done a comm buffer, if you do all of your shifts properly, you'll do your first comm buffer with Blizzara and Blizzaga. You'll come back and you'll have an ATB refresh there. So use Blizzara and Blizzaga right away because your chain is already full. You don't want to waste that. Use it. When you switch back into Tri-Disaster, that's when you can use your next potion because you still have a little bit of time for your ATB gauge to do a full refresh. And then if you need to use another one after that, again, just try to time it with in between your refreshes. Here we're going to throw Mog. Try not to go over the cliff here. You just want to aim a little bit towards the edge. And you can always watch your mini-map. So if you see Mog continually moving off the mini-map, that means you've thrown him too far. If he stops there, then you know you're good. And if you timed the enemy encounter before Feral correctly, you should be able to turn around and run away right away.
But it kept working inside it.
Exactly.
So you want to run over here, because we're going to come back here later, and we're going to get Chichu from that patch of grass. But for now, we want to spawn an encounter, and then return to the Historia Crux. And then we're back into Sunleth to finish off this area. We're going to do another little bit of menuing here before we go into the next boss battle. So we're just going to take whatever Crystarium points we have and we're going to level them up. So with Null you have 2 options here. You can do a Rav bonus boost and you can also increase your accessory capacity by 20. We are going to want to do 2 of these accessory increases by the end of the game. I choose to do 1 now, just because it means that I don't have to unequip Grimoire Hat and then re-equip it later. So if I do this now, then I can re-equip the Magician's Mark, and then I can get the Rav bonus boost later, because before we get to the point where we're going to need another accessory upgrade, we're still just leveling up with Ravager, so we'll be able to get that bonus boost again another time. So I just do this one now. Here we want to get the Sab bonus boost. This is important. We actually want 2 Sab bonus boosts out of Sarah. So we have 3 more role expansions or Crystarium expansions that we're going to be able to get. So we want 2 Sab bonuses and 1 ATB gauge increase. So we're going to do the Sab bonus here because during the level up we already had you can only get a bonus for a role that you've leveled up in that Crystarium level. So if you only do Ravager increases during this Crystarium level, when you get to the end, you won't have a Saboteur bonus boost available. So, but because in the last level we were leveling up the Saboteur, that's where we got D-Shell, the Sab bonus boost becomes available to us. So we want to select it then just so that it's already available to us and we know that she's already more effective as a Saboteur. And then now we're just going to continue with Ravagers for now, because the next boost that we're going to take is to the ATB gauge. And Nekton and Gahongas, we don't have to worry about leveling either of these up for the rest of the game. And then, like I said, you can come in here and equip the Magician's Mark on Null.
Where's Snow?
Knew it. He's going off to fight on his own.
This is fairly similar to the last fight with Royal Rightness. He takes a little bit more to stagger than the last time, but we're using pretty much the same tactic. So start out with that Smart Bomb, get the D shell, start chaining him, get that Faith, and then just chain, chain, chain. There's a little bit of variability here depending on how he attacks, so you might lose a little bit of time depending on him, how he wants to act. Great, so now we can head over, and our comm buffer here is going to be Aroga and then Aurora, so it's kind of opposite of what you would do with the Blizzard. It's pretty straightforward. There's really nothing to be worried about with that fight. And you have to mash through that text before you can actually cutscene skip. Hopefully you can get an encounter on this platform. It's a little close, we'll see.
We might not be able to reach it.
Okay, we were able to despawn them, that's good. We're going to throw and get this artifact. Just be careful with the throw. It's a lot closer than you think it is, so you really don't have to throw that far to get the artifact. And then since we got that spawn right away, we could actually have turned around right away and started running towards the gate. Just be careful not to mash directly through. You actually want to step back and go to the middle one. This is really easy. Just turn right back around and go in. Nothing to see here. So just as when we unlocked Oerba to come over to Sunleth, now that we're finished with Sunleth, we're going to want to go back to Oerba. So L1 and left once.
Created the paradoxes. Did they really want an empty, dead world?
In a world abandoned by the Fal'Cie, the ones who were left behind craved nothingness. Over there, Mom. An empty world.
Where did you hear that?
All of the temporal anomalies here require one cutscene skip before you enter the void, and then one cutscene skip when you exit. This one requires two because there's a minor storyline event, and then there's this cutscene. All other ones require one before and one after. This is two before and one after. I'm not going to go over the in-depth how to complete these anomalies. There are tutorials on how to do that, and this is, to be honest, not my strongest point of the game. I have a particular way of doing them, which I also know doesn't actually match up with some other ones. So you can just watch what I do. If it works for you, if you want to use another one, there are probably other ways that are slightly faster than what I do. But this has just been working for me. I just kind of pay attention to the colors, and I know roughly what the shapes are at this point. So it's kind of half muscle memory, half um, I don't know what, paying attention, connect the dots kind of thing. So there's definitely more optimal ways to do these, but it's not something I'm really concerned about at this stage. I could probably save if I learn these properly, I could probably save maybe another 20 seconds, maybe 10 to 20 seconds on my run, but not something that I'm really concerned about at this point because I haven't messed them up too badly so far. You want to try to grab this chest before. That's too bad. So that's a bit of a time loss coming back later, but it's not missable, so we can definitely get it.
Over there, Mug. Another head scratcher.
I always forget that one. That's definitely one that I know I should review and save time, but I always find that purple color just blends in slightly to the background.
No problem.
Hey, we did it! Splendiferous! I knew you'd do it, Koopa Koopa!
That's a pretty good area for a spawn because we're going to want one more before we head down the stairs over here. So you want to hang back just a little bit, and you don't want to head too close to the stairs going down over there. Because if you do, chances are it'll be the Cleones, and they'll want to follow you down. Okay, that's actually a pretty good spawn. Those guys won't really follow you, and you'll be able to get spawned down here.
Giddy up.
And this is the last anomaly in this area, which is always a big relief for me. They're not the worst things in the world, and they're definitely easily learnable, because it's the same pattern every time, so there's nothing really to be concerned about there. The only problem I have is with my controller button sticking sometimes. And I'm not sure if it's a PC port issue or if it's just my controller issue, but I do have some of the hard turnarounds or the quick grabs between completing a crystal segment and then having to grab the next one. Sometimes there's just a bit of input lag, and I can get some slip-ups that way. But it's never been like anything fatal in terms of killing the run. That's pretty decent except for that turnaround. This is kind of a weird area for me just because Oerba, I have mixed feelings about Oerba 200. I really don't care for the anomalies, but this is one of my favorite fights in the whole game. This was when I was starting to learn this run.
Right on
Uh,
schedule.
when I got to this fight, and this was kind of like, it's one of those fights that makes you feel cool. You're like, yeah, I've got strats. So it's, yeah, I don't know, it's just fun to do. And you know, it's kind of like, it's like an epic storyline moment. So it's definitely a whole lot of feelings going on there. You can pick up, there's a chest up here, you can run over here, and depending on if you get an encounter or not, it is optional. I think most runners pick this up. It's just safety for Gil later on. So you want to do the reveal, but not actually get the item now. Depending on where the encounter comes, you can pick that chest up now or later, but it is a Libra scope, so you do want it. The number of Libra scopes you need are, it's exact how many you need. It's kind of, it's almost like the greens, only it's going to be a little bit worse if you don't. If you have greens, you can get around it. It's a little bit of a time loss. I feel like the Libra scopes are a little bit more necessary. This you'll want to pick up because you're not coming back down this way afterwards. But it should despawn when you come up to that area. And next bit of menuing. So again for Null, just Ravager. And this is actually the last we're going to do for Null for quite a bit. So here we'll take the Ravager bonus boost. And for Sarah, we just want to get that ATB increase. So we're just going to do Ravagers for now. So now they each have 5. And everything's good. We have the Magician's Mark on. We don't have to do anything with the party paradigms. Like I said, Nekton and Gahongas, we're never going to level them up again. So everything's good at this point. So this is the first time in the run that we're going to use Gahongas' Feral Link. So it just hits you with a bunch of buffs, which is pretty useful. And especially Caius is going to try to use some attacks that would normally launch you if you didn't have, I believe it's Veil is the correct one, that prevents you from being interrupted or increases your chances of not being interrupted. So as soon as we start the fight, we're going to switch into Malevolence right away, and that works as like an ATB refresh, as I've talked before about. So we head over into Malevolence. You want to select Auto Battle first, and then activate the Feral Link. If you switch over into Malevolence and activate the Feral Link first, you're going to miss out on the chain building that Noel would be doing during the Feral Link. So you'll see, once you switch over, Auto Battle, hit Feral Link, and then you'll see while that's going on, Noel will be doing firing off his attacks. So we built his chain gauge, but now it's only Ravagers that have attacked him so far. So it's going to fall pretty quickly. We're going to want to head back into Smart Bomb and just use those debuffs from Sarah to try to mitigate the depletion of his gauge. And at the same time, we're going to have the 2 Ravagers, Nekton and Noel, boosting his chain gauge even more. Next step is to switch into Tri-Disaster. We're going to use raw level spells to stagger him. We're going to Calm Buffer him once, so Blizara Blizzaga, Calm Buffer. Then we're going to stay in Commando, and we're going to fire off 3 Ruins, and that will be it. So it's pretty fun.
Hey, hold on a second. What do you mean, sanctions?
I must protect the sanctity of the timeline.
And that's it. And then we get this long, unskippable cutscene. So this is kind of your first real break in the game, so enjoy it.
stop this, Caius. I am not going to fight you.
Times have changed. I'm not the Caius you once knew. To change history is a sin.
It's too late. The timeline has already changed.
But must we accept this, Yule?
If you change the future, you change the past. You can remold history as your heart desires.
Let's go now, before you are made to witness more. Come.
Yule.
You can select anything for this live trigger, doesn't matter. Most people just say how much would the artifact sell for. I'm just going to skip it anyway, it doesn't matter. So remember, we want to grab this Libroscope because we missed it on the way down. Generally, depending on how you do it, this is usually pretty easily obtainable. Because we did move up here and did the Mog reveal, it did kind of throw off my step counter a little bit. But like I said, there's not really any time wasted. And the Hypno Crown is totally optional. I've done plenty of runs without it, and it's been fine. It's just, like I said, it's kind of a backup, because I think it gives you around 5,000 gil. So it's just nice to have later on, just in case. And also because we missed this first chest up here, we're gonna want to run back and grab this. You do not want to try to complete this run without those 2 Gizzle Greens. So here we go. Whoops. That was my bad, my finger slipped there. No worries, we should be fine. It's nice that most of the times you open up new gates throughout this run, you're just going there straight ahead. It's really only the ones at the beginning. So like, when you first unlock Sunleth, you have to go back to New Bodom first, and then back to Brescia, and then to Yaschas Massif, and then that opens up Oerba, and then you go into Sunleth. Once you kind of get past that stage, when you open up the Colosseum, you go directly there. When you open up this, you go directly here. So for most of the rest of the run, anytime a new gate opens, you're just going to be going straight in there. So it just kind of helps to keep things straightforward.
Paradox didn't happen. Then maybe Hope never had any reason to come here.
There's still the Oracle Drive.
And that is another reason I found having particular splits to be helpful when I was learning the run. Just, if you have splits, it just kind of helps give you a little bit of a cue. Once you stop using notes, it gives you a little bit of a clue onto where you're going next. If you have a split for this particular boss, and then you see that the next split is another particular boss, it just kind of jogs your memory on where you're supposed to be going. This is a fairly unlucky encounter, but that's fine. We will despawn them eventually up here. And again, once you get into this corridor, you're always going to be facing left, so you can always just hold that as soon as you come up. That's one of those weird cutscenes where it's an active live cutscene. So it looks like you can just start running around and talking to Sarah, but as soon as it loads, you can just cutscene skip there.
No one was here.
I guess the ruins were interesting enough. They didn't need the paradox to draw them here. I hope he's being a good little doggy.
Director, who are you waiting for?
And this is pretty similar to the last time we talked to Hope, so we're just going to do a bunch of cutscene skips. And as soon as you hear that music, then you know you've finished the
There's
cutscenes.
still some places we haven't checked out.
We should try asking some of the people around here. They might know something that
So
will
up
help.
here, this is another one of these cases where when you do a MOG reveal and the camera shifts, or there's a cutscene and the camera shifts back, your own camera can kind of get a little bit disoriented. So what you want to do here is we're going to do a MOG reveal as we're running up the ramp in the particular spot. So when MOG reaches a particular spot, we want him to do a MOG reveal. And then that allows us to get far enough around the corner so that even if Noel is still out of the range of the camera when the item is being revealed, we can use our R3 to reorient the camera and continue holding down the left joystick in the direction that we want to be going in. So if you run up there and you do a MOG reveal and Noel is out of sight of the camera, keep running, use R3 to reorient the camera. It won't pan out, but it will reorient it, and then you just keep running. If you have it in the correct position, though, you should be able to bring Noel back into the picture as the item is being revealed, and then that's pretty straightforward from there because you'll visually be able to control him. So you want MOG to be right around there, and then just try to hug around the corner as quickly as you can.
We did it. Now we gotta find out which gate it belongs to.
Just this moment, I felt a disturbance coming from the mountains. I bet my bubble gate appeared there, Kubo.
I hope I left enough food in his bowl.
This next item that we're going to get is pretty important. It's the unicorn horn, and it's actually not used until the final form of the last boss. So do not miss this. You have 2 chances to get this. Better to get it now just in case your greens count is off and you're not able to get it when you come back to this area in 100 AF. So I strongly recommend that you make sure that you get it there, and there's not really any reason that you wouldn't be able to get it. The only thing you have to be careful of when you're up on that ledge is that as you run past the woman, the camera's going to just shift slightly and it's going to want you to interact with her. Wait until you're well enough past and you've heard that sound click again, and then you're centered over the item. The target selection is a little bit odd in this game, where it does, sometimes you can even target characters or items that are not really in your camera range, but because you've walked by them, it still has them auto-selected.
Try using the switch.
This part of Augusta, so Augusta 300 is pretty straightforward. You're really just, Sarah's directing you where to go and telling you when you've pressed the switch enough times. So you can come over here and grab that chest first. And again, depending on where you had your last spawn, if you're kind of familiar with how that works, you can wait until you see the chest move and then you can run over here. Very rarely you'll get an enemy encounter. It shouldn't happen though.
Yeah, just like that.
So it's pretty easy to see when you've turned it enough times. And like I said, Sarah will also tell you if you've done it properly or not. That's a slightly unusual encounter. Normally you'll see a Flanitor appear there, and they're a lot easier to escape.
I know, but it has to be. Maybe this is a paradox of some sort. I don't think that's enough. That's how it's done.
When we come back to Augusta in 200 AF, it's a little bit more involved and kind of slightly more puzzle-ish. But this is kind of a good introduction to it and the button-pressing mechanic of it all, I guess. That's a funny spawn for them to show up right in the middle. It's just harder because obviously you're in a circle. It's hard to get away from them. It's also interesting when you come to Augusta in 300 AF, you cannot, there are no cutscene skips here in terms of elevators or anything like that. When you come back in 200 AF, you can cutscene skip all of the elevators. So like for instance here, we can't skip this. When we have these kinds of elevators appearing or switches appearing in 200 AF, you can skip all of them.
That's how it's done. No, we did it.
There's not really much to talk about here. Again, this is just kind of like a nice break in the middle of the run. You know, it's been not really intensive, but it's just been kind of go, go, go. And then, you know, you have the big cutscene, unskippable cutscene in Oerba after you fight Caius. And then you have this that you just kind of get to take your time. It's not... Besides escaping enemies, there's not really much else to do here. The only thing you have to remember here at the end is that the passcode is always the same. It's always going to be the square button or X on the 360 controller, or basically the left option. So you can mash through the text until the live trigger appears, select it, and now we can skip. Select, and then skip. Depending on where your last enemy encounter was, you might want to spawn another one here. So it was a little bit far away, so just to be safe, I'm going to get one going here. So yeah, that was close enough that it was worth doing. So we're going to come back here, and we want to spawn that encounter just because depending on where the Chocobo is when you come back to the Yaschas Massif, the Chocobo could have walked who knows how far away, and it could have been far enough away that I got an enemy encounter in the meantime. And the enemy encounters in the Yaschas Massif are not really ones you want to get into. They can take a little bit longer depending on what you get. So just to be safe, if you get one right before you enter the passcode, you should be fine. And if it's been a little while before you saw one, just make sure you run around and then crux out and head back here. This is pretty straightforward. By the time you get here, the text should be close to appearing. And as before, make sure you don't activate the gate before the text from that item box shows up. And again, there's not much to do in the Void Beyond. I have seen some people collect an item here, I believe just for gill safety, which you could, but I've never collected the item here and things have been fine. So if you want to reference somebody's notes, they might talk about why they get that item here, but
Mog, is this even the
according
same
to
place?
this route, it's not necessary.
This is the Void Beyond, Kupo. It's
So this is one of the cases where we do want to go to Academia next, but we actually also want to go to Serendipity, and they look pretty far away. But you'll see actually if we press L1 again, as before we did between Oerba and Sunleth, Serendipity and Academia are right next to each other. So that's great. We actually do want to go to Serendipity first though, because we have to unlock the fragment skills, because we need to get Chichu before we continue on the run.
It is clear.
So let's get those fragment skills going, because we're going to need that. Because first thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to, we're going to head back to the Archylte Steppe, and we're going to need that fragment skill to get Chichu. So normally you wouldn't have hit L1 already, so it would have, so it opens up 400 AF, and then it opens up Serendipity, and we're right here. So once we come out of Serendipity, just down into the Archylte Steppe. And here you don't want to throw too far, just throw some mogs just over the bushes. This is a pretty safe throw. He says as he gets one gill. It should generally not take more than 2 or 3 throws. Wow, those are really bad throws. I have to say, this has never happened before.
You got this.
That should be good. There we go.
Nice.
So a little bit to the left I found is kind of more consistent. And then we can just head back to the Historia Crux. And then we're going to head over to Academia next. And that will be the starting point of the next segment of this tutorial. So thanks again so much for watching this. I hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for the next installments. Thanks for watching.